This is the presentation, Illinois Reading Council, October 1st, 2016, an inclusive literature workshop, the books and conversations that illuminate our lives within and beyond the classroom. I started the presentation with asking the participants to think about the books that are in their curriculum and whether or not they're inclusive. And I have an asterisk because inclusivity lists will always be partial. It's hard to be entirely inclusive. And we talked about which descriptors are most unfamiliar to students, and then which books the students love that really stretch them into new ways of being in the world. My name is Sarah Donovan. I'm a teacher at Winston Campus Junior High in Palatine for 7th and 8th grade reading, and I'm also an adolescent development instructor at DePaul University, and my website is ethicalela.com, where the materials for the presentation are available. The central philosophy or thinking that has guided this project is, if we teach so that our students will sustain and improve our world, then they must imagine how our world ought to be. And if that world is going to be healthy, whether it's peace, resources, environment, kindness, then our students must become conscious and seek out understanding of all that is humanity. And I think that book can do the work of inviting students into the different lived lives that is humanity, much more than one teacher or one classroom novel can. So this is a year-long study where I ask what our students are reading and how can or will books illuminate humanity to initiate conversations about how our world ought to be for 7th graders. So this is a 2015 pre-reading class survey that I did on Google Forms, which you can also do on any kind of form or survey platform like SurveyMonkey. And I asked about their race and culture, and I didn't want to give categories for them because I wanted to see how they would define it among some other questions. And then I asked them to fill out this sort of chart, rather, about the different kinds of books that they read, specifically about the main character and the kinds of main characters that are in the books that they've read. Here's some of the results from September 2015. The students identify their race and culture in a lot of different ways, which you can pause here and take a look. As you can see, what's most important is that we look at this as I'm looking at places where there are gaps in the curriculum or gaps in their reading where they haven't read very much in these areas. So if students live in another country, students seem to have a lot of experience with that up here. And then I also look at these percentages here to give me a sense of the kind of reading students are doing. If the character is a boy, if the character is a girl. And you can pause at any point to take a closer look at this. Of course, in the categories of the main character being transgender or gay, we have a higher percentage that students haven't had any reading experiences like that. And here's race and culture, ability difference, emotional difference, poverty, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, so religion, location, urban, suburban, or rural. So I'm trying to think about all the different ways that literature can be more inclusive in our classroom. So I learned that some students read quite widely, and about half of my students had little to no experience in certain areas like culture, religion, gender, sexual identity, ability difference, or class. But what I didn't learn from the survey is how they read and how they think about the subjects, and in what ways I could support their reading, and what impacts the reading has had on their reading lives and their lived lives. So I continued to study by revising my practices in the classroom, and I took an inventory of my current selections so that I could fill the gap. I changed the way I shared books by making them available at all times. So I used to just keep like all my mystery books in a box and take those out at certain time periods. Or if we did African American study, I would take those books out just for that specific purposes. But this way I wanted all the books to be available at all times. And I had to do a lot of reading to expand my own reading gaps and nerdy book club, reading diverse books, epic reads, Brightly, and Disability and Kidlit were all helpful sources. And I developed this list that's available on Ethical ELA, and then brought those books into the classroom with the help of the Boker Foundation grant, which is a grant that was made available to the teachers in my school last year when a beloved board member had passed away. And he was very passionate about reading and passionate about our school. So his wife created this foundation in memory of him, and our students benefited from his interest and his family's interest in literacy. So one of the ways that you can afford the classroom library is grants. Also, you can ask students to gift a book to the classroom, book deals online, and crowdfunding. So how do I time for all of humanity in 41 minutes? Well, I use the reading workshop model with Nancy Atwell, Donald Miller, Penny Kittle, Kelly Gallagher, Leslie Ressing, and Jennifer Byrne all have books on how to do this, but essentially we create 15 minutes for independent reading and 25 minutes for shared reading and mini lessons. So you can pause here and take a closer look at that. Then I had to revise some of the assessment experiences so that could be more inclusive. There's no point in reading diverse literature and then minimizing conversations or trying to minimize evaluation. So we brought in book groups and iMovies and blogs and virtual conferences, daily reading, and activist speeches. For the book groups and iMovies, students organize their own groups, chose their own books. I asked them to do book groups. If you want to listen in on some of the book groups, you can click on this link. And if you want to take a look at some of the iMovie examples here, you can look at this for Anything But Typical by Nora Baskin. We did weekly blogs with virtual feedback where I entered conversation with students and sort of challenged some of their thinking and then offered new recommendations. So here's just one student's choices. She read Girl in Translation. She read Boy Meets Boy, and this is October. And at any point you can pause and read these. She read Parrotfish later in October. And The Smell of Old Lady Perfume in April. So, and in between October and April, we read Tree Girl and The Outsiders and lots of poetry. And the students did some other reading as well. I'm just sort of giving you a glimpse. And other books that students read were Booked by Kwame Alexander, and El Defo or El Diafo by C.C. Bell, Anything But Typical, and a selection of books by Jason Reynolds, When I Was the Greatest, All American Boys, The Boy in the Black Suit, Ghost, As Brave as You Are, Never Fall Down by Patricia McCormick with Armstrong Pond, Words with Wings by Nikki Grimes. And then we did activism speeches where I asked students to express, this is sort of the end of the year, the things that they wanted to change in the world and what they wanted people to do. And then we developed some reading and research in these areas where students gave a TED Talk to end the school year about how they wanted to change the world. And then I gave a post-reading survey about the things that most resonated with students. And these are some of the words and books that students read that they're going to kind of carry. They said they would carry them with them after the school year ended. And these are books that had an impact on them. Outsiders, Everything, Tree Girl, and then some spoken word pieces, Knock Knock and Counting Graves, among many others. And I asked them what helped them as a reader, and this survey sort of came from Donald and Miller, this specific question. And by far, the independent reading time made the biggest difference, in addition to conversations with classmates in the classroom library. And then I asked them about some of the discoveries that they made. And here's just sort of a closer look at some of the discoveries. I learned that transgender and gay are two different things, that war is not the same thing from the eyes of someone seeing it on the media as from someone seeing it happen right in front of them. I discovered it's hard to have a disease